Welcome, writers. I have got Stacy Frazer here with me. Hi, Stacy.
Hi, Sarah. Thanks for having me.
Yes, this is going to be a great conversation, writers, because Stacy has some really great things to say under her motto of "Write It Scared." And so this is going to be just fabulous for all the writers, no matter what you are writing, no matter what stage of writing you are in, and no matter how long you've been writing. This is going to be a great conversation for you. But I know Stacy, but you may not. So, Stacy, let me introduce you to our writers. Stacy is a formerly repressed creative soul turned fiction writer, Author Accelerator certified book coach, and host of the Write It Scared podcast, which is a great podcast, writers. So we will have a link to that, and you should totally subscribe and listen. Her mission is to help beginning and struggling fiction writers overcome self-doubt, find joy, and gain clarity and confidence in their process and craft so they can finish books they are proud of. When not writing, reading, or working with writers, you can find Stacy crafting with her daughter or on the trail with her big, goofy Labrador, Gus Gus. Is that
Mm.
Cinderella? Gus Gus? Is that
Gus Gus. Yeah. He's a 100-pound lab that thinks he's a lap dog, but at the time, he was a puppy and he was fuzzy. And
Yeah.
so we called him Gus Gus.
No, that's awesome. And then, of course, we'll have links to the in the show notes here, writers, but you can also connect with Stacy on her website, writeitscared.co, or on Instagram at writeitscared. And I think the writers will see a theme here.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
So I think let's jump right in with that. I love this phrase that you have, the "Write It Scared." Can you tell us a bit how you came up with this motto for your coaching business?
Sure. Yeah, well, it's kind of just what I do every day. um, and have
Yeah.
done and continue to do. And I think it resonates with a lot of the writers that I work with is for myself personally, I did not I came to writing later in life, and I when I was younger was, a creative little kid, and that got stomped out of me. And it took me a long time to get back to that. And when I did, I ran up against this idea, there was a problem with my permission slip. I was looking for somebody to give me a permission slip, and nobody's going to do that for you. And I had like all the fears, what do I have to say? Like, I wasn't used to using my voice as anything other than an echo chamber for other people. I didn't know what I thought or what I believed in really for the longest time. I had some significant growing up to do in my 20s and my early 30s. And some of that led to some pretty dark, twisty roads, right? But out of that, I started to write, and then it was like, well, okay, maybe I can. But again, like, just snowballed with all the, who am I to do this? Who am I to say this? What are other people gonna think? Is it good enough? I don't have a degree. Like, this isn't what I studied. My background's in medicine, all the things. So I've always kind of loved the saying that if you're not scared, you're not writing.
Mm,
Because I believe, I mean, as fiction writers, we're what we put on the page is a piece of us.
yeah.
That's true, nonfiction too, but and definitely memoir, but um, and so there's a vulnerability to it, and I don't think that ever really goes away. And
Yeah.
so if we want to do this, we have to find, we're here because we have the desire to do it for the most part. Nobody's like holding us to the fire, making us do this, right? We're doing it to ourselves. We have the desire. So then we got to fix that permission slip. It's got to come from inside. We have to cultivate the belief that we can and that we should and that we can't, that we can and that we should, we will.
Yeah.
And then continue to pursue it with courage when it gets hard.
Yeah.
Um, and have the resolve to finish what we start. And I don't think that fearless and courageous are synonyms, right? We got to learn
Interesting.
to do we have to learn to do this in spite of what scares us.
Yeah.
That's why it's called Write It Scared.
No, that's fantastic. So you mentioned like typical fears that certainly writers have. So like in your experience, whether it's for you personally or with the writers that you're working with, what are some common, what do you think are like the common fears that writers are coming up against when
Oh
they're
boy.
blocked?
Yeah. Wow. I mean, run the gamut, right? Is it good enough? What are they gonna think? You know, they're gonna judge me. I'm too old. I'm too young. I don't have a degree. I need a degree. Just yeah, just all the variations of self-doubt that come down to really boiled back down to, you know, is it good enough? Will I be rejected? Should I bother? Am I wasting my time? I think those are the cores.
Yeah. Yeah. And the answer is yes, you will be rejected.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
maybe at some point someone will also say yes, but not everyone will say yes to your work, no matter how well loved it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So is this I remember what it was for me. Is this a worthy pursuit of my time?
Mhm.
And nobody could answer that for me except myself. I had to make that decision on my own. And that meant I had to overcome the other things that were kind of holding me back, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, yeah.
I think it's easy to think, I mean, certainly some of these fears might be more common in writers who are trying it for the first time. Um, but for writers who are more seasoned, I think they still have their own set of fears. And sometimes they're new from what first time writers will experience. It's like, I did it once, but can I do it again? It's like now we have a whole new ball of wax to deal with. I don't think it ever 100% goes away.
I don't think so either. I think the goal is just kind of like to get out of the paralysis
Yeah.
piece and into action, even though you're still scared.
Yeah.
At least you're doing stuff,
Yeah.
right? You're moving. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
getting out of the paralysis. And a lot of the writers I work with, that's one of the big struggles is they have this analysis paralysis, which can speak to, you're just dealing with a level of anxiety and you like things to be a certain, you like a certain level of security before you go forward. And really that's what fear is, right? Fear is a natural instinct. It's not good. It's not bad. It's designed to keep us safe. But we often, there are situations where we can use discernment and decide, do we need it right now in the first draft when nobody's paying attention at all? Nobody's looking. Promise, nobody's looking. Do we need that? Or can we lower our expectations and give it a go and let it
Well,
be?
I feel like you've already touched on one way because I also wanted to ask you like how you like to help people move out of these fears and to move forward. And I feel like you've just touched on a big one, reminding people that it can be for you for a while.
Yeah, and I actually just did I can't remember if I just did a podcast episode on this. I think I did, about figuring out who your first writer is.
Mm.
And that's you, right? It's not them. It's not whoever them is that's gonna think this isn't good enough. That's not who you're writing for right now. It's not for the critics or your family or your best friend or your neighbor or whatever, right? It's just for you. And I had a really hard time with that personally at the beginning. I know what I liked to read. I knew the stories I was drawn to, but I was embarrassed about that. Like
Mm,
my
mhm.
circles, the circles around me, I mean, not that I knew what they were reading at night. I just assumed that they read better stuff than what I
Yeah.
was reading, right?
Tolstoy, right?
Right, exactly. Exactly. And instead I'm curled up with a young adult romantasy and going, "Yes," you know.
Yeah.
uh and and not that I think that any writing that is good or bad or indifferent or whatever your taste is, but I myself compared what I liked to what I thought I should like
Mm-hmm.
given the circumstances around me. And that was an internal belief system that did not serve me. So you ask, like, how do I
Yeah.
help writers? I kind of use a two-prong approach, really. It's one, cultivating a healthy relationship between the writer and the creative work, right? And so that's like looking at what the goals are, what the expectations are they reasonable, right? Given the constraints of your life, looking at the forms of resistance that typically come up for you. I mean, for most of us, it's some form of procrastination, perfectionism, pessimism, not good enough, right? And how does that pop up for you? How can we be mindful of it when it's getting in your way? And what are action steps we can take to do that? So that's on one side of the board, right? And then on the other side is actually creating the unique creative container for the writer in the story. And that's like the values that they hold and the reasons that they're writing this book and the foundation of the story. Who are the characters and what is the plots and the problem these characters are going to go through that speaks to, whatever the writer it is, whatever the story speaks to, whatever they want that to speak to. So we're designing both of those things at the same time, right? And we're just doing regular check-ins, like on, and being upfront about expectations. Like, I'm going to be a mirror for you. This is these are the values you set forth. These are the goals you set forth. I will hold that to you. I will hold that for you.
Yeah.
And when you are not coming to the table with what you want, I'm going to push and we're going to figure out why.
Yeah.
That's
No.
that's what a coach does, right?
Yeah. That's really good because as you had mentioned before, it's the action. I mean, we don't want to feel like we're these sitting ducks, just like
Uh,
waiting for people to come after us. There's something more empowering about trying to move forward, however small of steps you may be taking.
yeah. Yeah, and so it's more than just figuring out the dynamics of the story. It's also figuring out, how the writer works.
Yeah.
And sometimes they work differently than they think that they work.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a lot of fun. It's a rewarding process, and it's a long-term relationship and
Yeah.
a commitment,
Yeah.
right? And I love what I do. And I love helping other people put their stories in the world and step into and just watch them grow in confidence that they can.
Yeah.
That's the best feeling ever.
Yeah. You had mentioned that you came to writing from not writing or from a
Yeah.
not writing specific field. It's not like you were writing your novel in an MFA program somewhere. So I think that experience, because that's also an experience that I come from as well, I think it probably speaks to a lot of writers. So how were you able to move from being I'm not a writer to I am a writer?
Slowly.
Yes.
Slowly. Um, for me, the key was mentorship. That was the key. It was once I started, dabbling my feet or toes or whatever the expression is in the fiction world. Um, I was overwhelmed by all the different avenues to figure out how to do this thing. I mean, I have these beautiful books on my shelf, right? They're gorgeous. I love books. I've always loved stories. I've always admired authors, like, and I thought they were like these magical unicorns. They just, like, I don't know. They just poof, a story emerged and they fluttered off and they wrote the next one. This is not how it works, right? We know this. But in my naivete, that's what I envisioned because I had no clue what it took to do this. Anyway, so yeah, so I had no background. I had studied economics and medicine uh and I could, you know, write I could write you something very dry, a very dry, analytically designed like argument, but I could not entertain you. Anyway, so I wanted to learn how to do that, and I was overwhelmed at all the different resources out there. And that's when I heard about book coaching, right? I was reading all the craft books. And the point I was making there about the books on my shelf is like I understood like what I was writing was nowhere close to what I was
Yep.
reading. Like there was this huge gap between that, and I didn't know how to close that. So I was reading all the craft books. I was like, well, should I go take a creative writing class? Should I go get an MA or an MFA? Should I go back to school? I've always loved school. School sounds good. And then I heard about book coaching on a podcast. It was Mom Writes with Jenny
Yep.
Nash, and it was Abby and oh, what's the other
Yeah.
lady's name? Abby and
Melanie.
Melanie. Thank you.
Yeah.
And I was like, wait a minute. Oh, wait. So you mean like there's one-on-one, there's a way to like learn this one-on-one with somebody else. And I did that. Quite shortly after that, I contacted Author Accelerator and I found an Author Accelerator book coach. I worked with Don Ias and then went on to work with other people,
Yep.
other types of coaches and writing mentors. And that's really what it was, is getting that informed editorial feedback was a game changer for me.
Yep.
That's how I got my start.
Yeah, I love that you call it a mentorship too, because I think that sometimes writers might feel intimidated by the idea of working with a book coach because you're thinking, when you turn something into an editor, it's usually more polished by that point, and you're kind of looking for ways to just maybe clean it up a little bit more. But a book coach will actually like get in the dirt with you
Yeah.
and help you sort out the mess. And the nice thing is that you can along the way get affirmation about what you're doing well so that you can keep doing the good stuff, and you're like, okay. And I think that helps to build confidence, but then they will also help you, as you said, bridge this gap between
Mhm.
where you are and where you want to be.
Yeah. I mean, for example, like the first book coach I work with, I was like, I mean, I head hopped everywhere. I got to point of view. What's that? Dialogue attribution? Don't know. Where does that period go? Don't care. Never heard of that before. It's just things that you think that you would instinctually absorb, but you from reading, but you don't. Yeah. So a book coach is going to meet you where you are if they're the right coach for you. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they're going to meet you where you are. And if you need to learn those skill sets, and that's a service that they provide, they will do that. They will help you with that. So yeah, I, for me, like it was mentorship all the
Yeah.
way. That's what helped me step into, I'm a writer.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, the
And
great
I will
thing.
continue to write. And now I can't stop. And it's, and there's a certain level of insanity that comes along with that. And I have just accepted.
Yeah. Yeah, that's fair. The great thing here about your Write It Scared motto is that I feel like it never truly ends. There's always there's always like new ways for writers to come up against doubts or anxieties or fears about the work or about themselves even. That's certainly a big piece of it. So hopefully we can manage it better, but I don't know that it ever really goes away. I don't know if you feel the same or have a different look on that.
I don't, I, I don't think it ever really goes away. I mean, uncertainty is never going
Mhm.
to go away.
Yeah.
That's, we don't see out, we don't have crystal balls. We can't see the end result of things. Um, the best we can do is learn how to show up for the work that we want to do day to day and just do the next right thing in front of us in service to our values and our wish that we want to put out in the world. Because that's what a book is to me. It's like a wish, it can be a dark wish, could be a happy wish, but it's a wish that we put out in the world. So are we going to show up in service to that? Or are we not? It's like Yoda. It's like do or do not. There is
Yeah.
no try. Right? But with that, you have to, it's not, you got to leverage in your grace. You have to learn to leverage in your grace and ride the rhythm of life, right? Because sometimes there is zero words happening here.
Yes.
Zero.
Yep.
And uh and it sucks.
And it's
But
another thing to be afraid of.
right.
It's
And
like,
will
oh
I
my God.
ever figure this thing out? Will I ever figure this thing out? I don't know. But I certainly won't if I don't show up.
Yeah.
So, it's kind of a suit up, show up, give yourself grace when you're just human. You can't do all the things. But will the uncertainty ever go away? No, but I think we can definitely get better at managing our response to it by, remembering to align our intention with our action. So,
That's really profound. Lining up intention and action.
wow.
So
Well, somebody
yeah.
must have said it before me and I
Yeah.
just glommed onto
No,
it.
nope. I'm gonna give you credit for that one. Maybe someone
Well,
did say
thanks.
it, but I'm gonna give you credit for that one because that's really well said. Well, writers, as you can tell, I really hope that this has been helpful for all of you, and hopefully this has given you a shot of inspiration. And Stacy, can you remind us where we're gonna find you online and tell us what you're up to? Tell us what's coming next for Stacy and Write It Scared.
Let's see what's coming next. Well, so the Write It Scared
Yep.
podcast has been out for 5 months now. It's a lot of fun. I enjoy talking to writers and people in the professional book world about the different pieces of the process and speaking with writers about their process and what hangs them up. And the whole point of the podcast is really to show that writing is hard. Yes. But you're not alone. And, you can do this too if you want to. That's the point. And hopefully to connect writers with the voices and the messages they need to move forward. So the podcast is out there. It's the Write It Scared podcast. It's on all places that podcasts live. Let's see. There's that. I do work with clients private coaching. I do private coaching and I just kicked off my group coaching cohorts for fall. So nothing will be open there until spring. And those are a lot of fun. And it's just creating a solid, safe, supportive community where people show up and make good on their goals and
Yep.
have, we cry, we laugh more than we cry, I promise. And I'm working on my own fiction, right? And pulling out my hair and momming and lifing and all the things. So you can find me at writeitscared.co and on Instagram at writeitscared. And the podcast.
Awesome. Well, Stacy, I just want to thank you again for this conversation and thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you so much for having me.
And writers, we will have links for all the things so that you can find Stacy easily and absolutely do check out her podcast and go ahead and subscribe and leave a nice rating.
Thank you.
All right, writers, thank you for joining us. We will catch you next time. Bye.